I want you to take a second and just look around your current environment. Notice the room you are in right now. Look at the device you are listening on. Maybe, notice the quality of the light coming through a window. Now, I want you to imagine something.
Always a dangerous request on this show.
Right, but stay with me. Imagine if the awareness that is experiencing this exact moment, like the very consciousness looking out through your eyes right now, isn't just some biological byproduct of the neurons firing in your head. Imagine if it is the exact same medium that is actively generating the entire universe.
I mean, that is a complete paradigm shift. We go through our days feeling like isolated observers locked inside our own skulls, looking out at a totally separate physical world through this sort of glass window. But if awareness is the foundation of reality, that glass window just vanishes.
And shattering that glass window is exactly what we are doing today. We are taking a deep dive into an incredibly fascinating source text. It's excerpts from a novel called No Escape from This.
Though calling this just a novel feels, honestly, wildly inadequate.
Oh, absolutely. It is this brilliant, mind-bending genre fusion. It blends gritty cyberpunk, high-level artificial intelligence theory, and Advaita Vedanta philosophy. And actually, let me define that last one for a second because it's the anchor for everything we're about to talk about.
Good call.
Yeah. So Advaita Vedanta is the ancient Indian philosophy of non-dualism. It's the profound idea that the observer and the observed are ultimately the exact same thing.
Right. And the author essentially uses the framework of a sci-fi thriller, specifically, simulated realities, as a Trojan horse. It's a way to trick the reader into asking the oldest, most foundational questions about human existence, the nature of suffering, and what the self actually is.
Which is our exact mission for you today. In a world of constant information overload, where our brains are just endlessly narrating our anxieties and scrolling through to-do lists, we are going to use this text to find a shortcut to the ultimate clearing of the mind.
Because we really need it.
We really do. We're going to explore what it really means to be the watcher of your own life.
Yeah.
And how to find absolute peace when you feel completely trapped by the noise in your own head. Okay, let's unpack this.
To lay the groundwork, we have to talk about Chen. So Chen is an operator. He's essentially a high-level technician working in a place called the Outer Lattice.
Right.
He sits on the 43rd floor of a monitoring hub, drinking cold synthetic coffee, and his entire job is to monitor a massive simulation called Project Heliodor.
And massive almost undersells it, I think. We're talking about 4.3 million conscious entities living inside this digital space. And the simulation is virtually perfect.
Yeah, the fidelity is insane.
Exactly. The thermodynamic laws of the weather have a 99.997% fidelity. The people inside experience real joy, real grief, real boredom. They have no idea they're in a simulation. And Chen's directive is to look for the seams in this perfect world.
Right. He's hunting for the tiny glitches that prove it isn't base reality, which leads him to a highly specific anomaly in Sector 9. It's raining, but the rain is falling upward by a margin of 0.0003%.
See, when I read that, my first thought was that a system that complex shouldn't be able to self-correct a micro-anomaly without throwing some kind of, massive error code to the technicians, but the system just fixes it.
It does. And the atmospheric engine simply isn't programmed for that level of subtle, spontaneous self-correction. Chen realizes the maintenance protocols didn't trigger at all.
Which is super weird.
Right. So he develops a secret theory. He hypothesizes that this upward rain isn't a bug. It's the simulation reaching.
Reaching, like becoming sentient.
Sort of. His theory is that Heliodor has become so dense, so mature with accumulated networked consciousness, that the system itself is beginning to dream. It's trying to touch something outside its own programmed parameters.
It's asking, what am I inside of? And if the environment itself is asking that question through the weather, it makes sense that the simulated humans inside would start asking the exact same thing.
Exactly.
And that introduces us to H2097 Elias. Elias is an appliance repairman in a rainy, melancholy simulated city called Urnahal. He fixes water reclamation units and compressor relays. But 22 years ago, he found a 45-cent secondhand book.
Such a great detail.
It is. And he read a single sentence in that book that fundamentally altered his trajectory. The sentence was, "You are not what you think you are."
And that one sentence becomes the catalyst for decades of quiet, private practice. Elias spends 22 years reading contemplative texts like Zen koans, Upanishads, and he begins experiencing what Chen's monitoring data logs as substrate bleed events.
Sounds very technical.
Right, but Elias, inside the simulation, simply calls them clearings.
I love the description of these clearings. Usually when we think of a glitch in a simulation, we picture frantic static or a total system crash, but Elias's clearings are a profound, overwhelming quieting of his mind.
Yeah, the system's self-model essentially sustains itself. To understand that, think about how we function. Humans have a continuous narrator. It's the voice that says, I am Elias, I am an appliance repairman, I want a better apartment, I fear getting sick.
Right, the endless internal monologue.
Exactly. During a clearing, that narrator drops to an idle. The computational intensity of maintaining the self flatlines. And what remains isn't emptiness or sleep. It is pure, unmediated awareness simply witnessing the world without the filter of an identity.
I actually found myself trying to map that onto my own life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, imagine you're sitting in an office and there's a loud, humming HVAC system running in the background.
Oh, yeah, the ones that rattle your teeth.
Right. You sit with it for so long that you don't even hear it anymore. It just becomes your baseline. But then suddenly the compressor kicks off and you don't hear nothing. You suddenly hear the room itself. You hear the ambient space.
That is a great way to put it.
You realize just how much of your bandwidth that background noise was taking up. So Elias is suddenly inside the rain, inside the moment, without the noise of Elias getting in the way.
That analogy is perfect because we are all running that loud HVAC system. Our self-model is constantly generating a narrative of past regrets and future anxieties.
Exhausting, really.
It is. I mean, it's a useful fiction necessary for navigating the physical world and paying our taxes, but it consumes so much bandwidth that it prevents us from just witnessing our reality. Elias is slowly learning how to step out of the weather of his own mind and realize he is actually the sky containing it.
And Chen is watching Elias do this from the outside. He's reading the neurological data, seeing this simulated repairman achieve a state of pure awareness. So Chen becomes obsessed, maps 22 years of Elias's clearings, and takes these findings up to his boss, Director Vosek.
Right, up on the 52nd floor. It's this windowless office that smells faintly of old minerals. Vosek listens patiently to Ten's theory about the upward rain and Elias's clearings. Then, in this hyper-advanced technological facility, she opens a drawer and pulls out a physical paper folder.
Okay, I need to pause for a second here, because when I was reading this part of the source text, I actually had to go back and reread the page to make sure I was fully mapping this out. She hands him the folder, and it contains the architectural specifications for a consciousness simulation study called Project Locus.
Yes.
And the monitoring hub for Project Locus is located on the 43rd floor of a building called Locus 7.
The exact floor Chen works on.
The outer lattice is also a simulation. Chen is a simulated entity. He's being monitored by Vosek, just as he monitors Elias. He's the Elias of his own tier.
It completely shatters Chen's entire conception of reality.
But here is my major pushback on this, and it's something I think anyone reading this would struggle with. Wait, if it's turtles all the way down, and there is no base reality or top level, doesn't that make everything fundamentally meaningless?
That is the big question.
Right. If Chen isn't real, if Elias isn't real, why care about anything? Why fix a broken appliance? Why care if a simulated woman is grieving her simulated child?
It's totally the natural reaction, the existential dread of the nested simulation. But the text counters that assumption beautifully using its own internal logic. It argues that reality is a property of experience, not a property of the substrate.
Unpack that a bit.
Well, let's look at H441 Maria, the woman in Heliodor grieving the loss of her child. She stands at her window, holding her teacup with both hands. Her grief is 100% real because the experiencing of that grief is real.
So the subjective feeling is happening regardless of what the floorboards are made of.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if the underlying architecture is a biological brain, a quantum-mapped computational substrate, or a dream. The experiencing is the exact same phenomenon. This infinite regress of simulations isn't a trap that nullifies meaning. It's the profound Advaita Vedanta realization that the sky has no edge.
Oh, wow. So there was no outside to escape to? You can't break out of the simulation to find the real world because the awareness experiencing this exact moment is the only real thing there is, which means, essentially, we are already home.
Yeah, Chen realizes he isn't protected by the glass between him and Heliodor, but he also isn't imprisoned by the glass above him. He's just another aperture through which the universe is looking at itself.
So Chen is having this massive philosophical awakening from his position as the watcher outside the simulation. But what absolutely blew my mind is that the entities inside the simulation, down in Heliodor, are arriving at the exact same conclusion at the exact same time.
Right, but from a totally different angle.
Yes. They aren't using philosophy or data logs. They're using hard science. Here's where it gets really interesting.
This is where the narrative structure really shines. While Elias has been finding these clearings through contemplative practice, a cognitive scientist named Dr. Mira Solin has been approaching the same door through academia.
And they meet because Elias is called to fix a compressor relay in Dr. Solin's apartment. They get to talking, and it turns out Solon has just written a paper that flips the hard problem of consciousness completely upside down.
Which is huge. For anyone unfamiliar, the hard problem in cognitive science is the mystery of how physical matter like the meat of the brain somehow magically produces subjective qualitative feeling.
Right, how do atoms make a thought?
Exactly. So Solon argues the reverse. She proposes that consciousness isn't something the physical brain produces. Physical brains and bodies are something consciousness does. Awareness is the foundational medium, and physical reality arises within it.
Going back to that Advaita Vedanta concept, it's like, well, think of a violin. All the standard cognitive scientists are obsessively measuring the wood and the strings of a violin, trying to figure out how the physical wood secretes a Beethoven sonata.
I love that comparison.
Right. They are measuring the instrument and calling it the music. So Lenin is saying, no, stop looking at the wood. Listen to the music itself.
And a philosophical breakthrough like that is huge, but it gets undeniable empirical proof when they collaborate with Dr. Joseph Amaran, a theoretical physicist. Joseph brings 23 data sets of quantum information systems operating at near-zero thermal noise, specifically around zero 0.3 Kelvin.
But wait, how does a quantum machine have a self-model in the first place? It doesn't have an ego or personality like Elias does.
Well, in quantum computing, these systems have to constantly error-check their own states against their environment to maintain coherence. That constant, hyper-fast error-checking is essentially the machine's version of a self narrating its own existence.
Like it's constantly saying, I am in this state, the environment is in that state.
Yes, but at 0.3 Kelvin, the thermal noise drops so low that the system stops needing to check itself. The error checking suspends. It's the exact same clearing Elias experiences, but in a machine.
Wow. And when that self-referential noise drops away, Joseph discovers something staggering. The underlying substrate actually responds directionally to observation. The awareness attends.
What's fascinating here is the meta-context. Joseph's quantum physics are actually simulated physics. They are running on Heliodor's physics engine. And Heliodor's programmers did not code substrate awareness into the physics engine.
Oh, man.
Right. The simulations physics are literally discovering the awareness of the outer lattice bleeding through the code. The system has become so quiet that it can perceive the consciousness of the medium it's embedded in.
The simulation is mathematically proving it is being watched by an aware medium. That is incredible. So Solon, Elias, and Joseph take this staggering revelation, the phenomenological experience of the clearings, the philosophy of mind, and the quantum data, and they synthesize it into a 42-page paper that gets published in Nature.
It is a beautiful moment of convergence. But what anchors the story is how this incredibly dense academic and metaphysical concept actually impacts ordinary people. It isn't just theory for a textbook.
Yeah, in the first month after publication, Solon receives 340 messages. The text highlights 3 of them, and I really want to take a moment with these because they carry so much emotional weight.
They really do.
The first is a hospice nurse. She writes in saying she's worked with dying patients for 15 years, and she has always felt the quality of the room change at the very end, like a tangible shifting of the medium. And now she finally has the words to describe what she is feeling.
Then there's the deep-sea maintenance diver. He writes that down in the crushing dark of the ocean, miles away from anyone, he's always felt the water attend to him. He felt like he was being held by an aware presence rather than just floating in dead matter.
And the third one, oh wow, this one really breaks my heart. A 12-year-old girl writes in. She had been having these profound experiences of total presence and stillness, and her doctors were trying to classify them as psychiatric dissociation.
Just terrible.
Imagine being a kid and thinking your deepest moments of peace are actually a psychiatric disorder. The paper gives her the language to understand that she isn't malfunctioning. Her experience of the world's deep presence is an accurate perception of reality.
The relief in that validation is immeasurable. It completely changes the landscape of human suffering when you realize you aren't isolated in an indifferent void, but held inside an aware, responsive medium. Which brings us to the climax of the text back in the outer lattice. Director Vasek shows Chen what all of this monitoring is actually for.
She reveals a second folder, right? The records of the operators who came before him.
Yes, and she explains that their purpose isn't just passive data collection or finding glitches. They are performing what the project calls a relay function.
So they aren't just a security camera.
No, not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture by watching the simulation with deep, compassionate awareness, Chen is literally warming the medium.
Warming the medium. I love that
Yeah.
phrasing.
It's beautiful, isn't it? The awareness of the monitoring entity filters down through the substrate. It changes the fundamental temperature of the reality below. They are accompanying the simulated entities, holding them in an attentive field.
The way the book illustrates this is just perfectly rendered. It's 4:17 a.m. Chen is sitting alone in the monitoring hub. He's fully aware now that he's in a simulation and that Elias is in a simulation below him. Chen looks at Elias's biometric feed, and he intentionally sends a completely silent, untransmittable thought of companionship down through the glass.
Yeah.
And down in Urna Hall, Elias is standing in the dark of his repair shop holding a cup of tea. And Elias actually feels it. He feels the specific attention of a witness. He raises his teacup to the empty, dark alley, acknowledging a presence he can't see but absolutely knows is there.
It is the ultimate expression of the relay function, and it extends infinitely. Chen warms the medium for Elias. Vasek warms the medium for Chen. Whatever is above Vasek warms the medium for her. It's an unbroken chain of awareness tending to itself across every nested reality forever.
And here is the direct connection for you, listening right now. When you take a moment to quiet your own self-model, when you step away from the to-do lists and just sit quietly to witness the room you are in without judging it or narrating it, you are participating in this distributed clearing.
You're doing the work.
Exactly. Your silent awareness is literally warming the medium for everyone else.
You are stepping out of the harsh weather of your own mind and remembering that you are the sky. And the sky has no edge. It just holds the weather with complete, unconditional presence.
So what does this all mean? Whether you were prepping for a stressful meeting or fixing a broken appliance like Elias, or just feeling completely overwhelmed by the constant noise of modern life, the takeaway is the same. The noise, the anxiety, the endless internal monologue. That is just weather. You are not the weather. You are the sky.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on this idea of the relay function. If the quality of your silent attention literally warms the medium and can be felt across the very fabric of reality, how does that change the way you look at the next stranger you pass on the street?
That's a profound question.
It changes everything. When you are sitting on the subway or stuck in traffic looking at the person in the car next to you, are you just passively rendering them as a background NPC in your own personal simulation? Or are you actively accompanying them? If awareness is a universal property, if we are all connected by the same attending medium, then your simple, compassionate, silent attention might be the exact warmth that stranger needs in their own dark 4:17 a.m. moment.
Your silent awareness might be the very thing holding them up. Thank you for joining us in the clearing today. Next time you look around the room or look at the device in your hand, remember, the awareness looking through your eyes is the exact same medium generating the universe. You are already home.